Hey there, it's Bobby, aka Paginator, and I'm here today to talk to you about some of the books that I've read recently. These aren't necessarily brand new books, although some of them are quite new, but they're new to me as in I've read them within the past month. These are not all of the books I read in the month of August, but they're the ones that I have physically here to hold up and show you, and they're the ones that I, to be honest, are most excited about because the other ones I read are now in my classroom because I'm not as excited about them. Alright, so the first book I have here is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. I know, where the heck have I been? It took me a while to decide to actually read Red Rising, and then when I did, I was like, I love this book. Having said that, I have not read Golden Sun yet. I read the first chapter and then I got blocked, so I decided to need to take a break from that and come back to it. But I'm sure that I'm going to love it. If you don't know Red Rising, it is a science fiction story, sometimes billed as young adult, sometimes just regular science fiction. The main character, Darrow, lives under the surface of Mars in a mining community, and the communities are given very limited supplies, and so when his group wins, or should win, the Laurel, which guarantees them extra supplies, but it's given to the same group that always wins it, Darrow realizes that something's wrong. And then more things happen, one of which is a terrible, horrible, crushing thing, and he decides, screw these people, I'm going to do something and stand up for myself. And that's all I better tell you about that one because I don't want to ruin things for you. Alright, up next we have The Way I Used to Be. This is by Amber Smith, and this book is very emotionally difficult to get through. This is the story of a rape survivor. She is raped by her brother's best friend, someone who she looked up to and trusted, but not only does he rape her, but he threatens her that she cannot speak about it, and her life kind of spirals into disaster as she's trying to cope with this thing that she doesn't dare tell anyone. There's trigger warnings for sexual abuse and rape, obviously. If you feel like that's too much for you to handle emotionally, do not read this. Up next we have Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson, and you may have heard me speaking about getting to go meet Mary and attend a signing that I went to. She was there with this new book, and she is wonderful, and her writing's wonderful, and just, yeah. If you have read any of her stuff, you may be aware of the Remnant Chronicles, the Kiss of Deception, and those books. And this takes place in that same world. We have two characters who hate each other. I mean, hate each other. And they're thrown together in a very genius way. And as I'm telling about this, I realize I feel like I've talked about this book in a video before, so if I've done like a wrap-up video and this book was in here, I'm sorry for talking about it again. For some reason, I feel like I still need to talk about it today. The writing in here, as I mentioned, was excellent. The characters are so well developed, and you get the feels, like, to the point where it hurts to breathe. Like, very emotional feels, so I highly recommend looking for a copy of Dance of Thieves. Then I have Man-Made Boy. This is by John Scovron, and I recently got the sequel to this in a book outlet haul, and so I thought, well, gosh, I should read the first one so that I can read the sequel. And this is about the son of Frankenstein's monster and the bride. He is simply named Boy. They live at a theater where all these creatures are gathered, like Medusa and lots of different magical creatures, and they put on this show and are able to showcase their magic without people realizing that it's real. But Boy's never really been outside the theater, and he wants to go and experience life and find out what it's like to live outside of the theater. So this is about his adventure to try to find his own identity and place in the world. Up next we have Notes From My Captivity. I did a full review of this by itself, and if I remember, I will link that in the information down below, or you can search my channel. I always say I want to link videos and then I forget. I apologize that I'm really bad at remembering, so I will try to remember that. Try to get it in my head. But this is a super fantastic book. Just quick notes if you don't want to listen to the full review. It is about a young woman who goes on an expedition with her stepfather to Siberia to try to discover a family of hermits that have legendarily been living in this inhospitable region by themselves for like 30 years. And they're going to see if this family's really real or if it's just stuff of legends. Up next we have As You Wish, and I bought this book on Book Outlet purely because this girl looks like my cousin Nicole, and I thought, oh, cute. But then I realized, oh, it's Jackson Pierce, even better. Jackson Pierce writes fairy tale retellings, and this is just a cute, fluffy, fairy tale-ish kind of book about a girl who is wishing really hard for something, and a genie magically comes into her life, and she's granted 3 wishes, but she's having a very hard time making those wishes. And the more that she gets to know the genie, who she calls Jin, the more she starts to care about him, and he starts to care about her. And so there is a romantic element as well, and this was another one where I got so sucked in to the fluff romantic story that it hurt my chest when the conflict was going on. I was like, oh, okay, this has to be resolved, or I'm going to throw this book at the wall. And I didn't have to throw the book at the wall, but that doesn't mean it's resolved in the way that you think it's going to be. Alright, up next we have Shadow Girl by Liana Liu, and this is a book that came to me in an owl crate quite a while ago, and it's just been sitting on my shelf waiting for me to read it, and it's very different than what I had thought it was going to be. It's very much a haunted story. Our main character, and I've got to remind myself her name, Mai, M-E-I, she is hired to be a personal private educational tutor for a young girl living in a very rich house on this place called Arrow Island. And the family, typical kind of rich family, we've got the father who's always working, hardly ever comes home. We've got the stepmom / mom who is wanting the perfect parties and the perfect everything, and she has hired Maya to tutor her daughter, which is the youngest child in the family. And then there's the son, who is the son of the father and the first wife. And when Mai gets there, she's not sure what to think about this son. She's there to tutor the daughter, and the son's kind of like weird with his sense of humor and kind of grouchy sometimes. So she's like, does he hate me? I'm just here to tutor his sister. What's going on? And then as they kind of get to know each other, there are some feels developed between them. But more so, this is about what's going on with the house itself. And it seems as though there is a ghost here, and it's a female ghost, and she doesn't seem happy, especially with the young daughter. And so there's some situations happening with that, so that's kind of paranormal-ish situations. This next book, Devoted by Jennifer Mathieu, is another one that I got in a book outlet haul, and I was really interested to read this because it's about a very strict Christian community, not quite to the length that we might call it a cult, but very, very controlling, very, very strict. Like, the kids can't watch TV, like, they're not allowed to go to school, just insane. The girl, our main character, she, Rachel, she has a copy of A Wrinkle in Time that she asked her mom to buy for her when they were at the store, and her father finds out and he makes her rip it up. Like, what's so bad about A Wrinkle in Time? Come on, that's like the best ever. So, not only that, but the father's horrible. The mother is trying to go along and make peace because that's what women are taught to do in these type of situations. They're taught to keep sweet or be a sweet spirit and not stand up for themselves. And Rachel, she's kind of questioning things and going, wait, why can't I decide for myself? And when a young woman who had left their religious community comes back to town, she finds this young woman's blog and starts reading about her in this new life where she gets to choose things for herself. And Rachel's really interested in that, so she's got to make some choices about what she's going to do with her life. All right, 2 more books. This next one is a reread, Isla and the Happily Ever After by Stephanie Perkins. While I was doing the Notes reading challenge, I needed a book with a green cover, and I decided to reread this one. This is a super cute one. If you haven't read any of Stephanie Perkins' stuff, a lot of her books are sweet, romantic teen situations. And this is about some American kids at a school in Paris Isla has had a crush on this guy for a long time, and she just really, really wants to be together with him. Josh is his name, and she also has this best friend who is on the autism spectrum, and Josh thinks that those two are dating, and so he hasn't really approached her before. But at the beginning of the book, these two strike up a relationship, but there's all kinds of conflict involved. Josh's family is very political, and he's always expected to do the right thing, but he's putting himself in situations where he gets in trouble at school a lot because he's trying to fight the men and, be a rebel. Isla is super, super smart. She's a top student in their class and expected to get into schools like La Sorbonne and all kinds of fancy schools like that after high school. And she's very serious, but when she and Josh strike up this relationship, some things about her start to change. And there's also some family dynamics in this, with relationships with her and her sister, friendship issues, as well as the relationship that is the main focus of the story. And then lastly, we have Underwater by Marissa Reichart. I loved this book. I couldn't even wait till I was done reading it before I put a picture of it on Instagram, because I wanted to tell people to go and read this book as quickly as possible. Now, having said that, I'm going to tell you, before I even tell you what the story's about, there are triggers for abuse, trauma, PTSD, anxiety, maybe not even so much, why did I say abuse? I guess I was thinking anxiety and the word abuse came out. Not abuse, but like anxiety, trauma, PTSD, okay? I'm stumbling over my words because I'm so excited about this book. So our main character used to be this competitive swimmer in school. She was confident in herself. She had boyfriends. She went on dates. Her name was Morgan, and she had this group of friends, and they were, not snobby, stuck-up girls, but they were friends, and they were confident in themselves, and they were just kind of fun girls at school. And when we start reading the book, we see Morgan completely opposite of that. She is completely inside of herself. She's agoraphobic. She hasn't left her family's apartment in ages. She has a therapist that has to come to see her twice a week because she can't leave. She can't even step outside the door. And on the second page or so, we meet her new neighbor, who happens to be a not bad looking teenage boy, and I keep forgetting his name, Evan. See, I read these books and then the names fly out of my head. I remember the stories, but the names are like gone. Anyway, Evan stops by to see if she can move the car because he's carrying big things and doesn't want to scratch it, and she goes, "I'm sorry, I can't." And they strike up a friendship. Also during this time, we find out that Morgan's father is alcoholic, and he's been in and out of the family's life like crazy, now onto drugs as well as alcohol. And so you kind of wonder if that's why Morgan's kind of kept to herself. But then we start to realize that she was part of something that was absolutely bloody horrible. Now, I'll tell you what the event was. I'm not going to just tell all the details, but if you don't want to know, just push mute for like 5 seconds. She's involved in a school shooting, and she had a small role in getting that person to the school that day. Yeah. All right, so she's dealing with a lot of emotions. We're safe now if you're back to listening. No more spoilers. She's dealing with a lot of emotions. She's got this new guy, Evan, in her life. She really likes him. She wants to be better. She wants to be well. She has this darling little brother who is going to be in a school play, and he really wants her to come, so she's trying so hard to work on herself. But as it says on the cover, sometimes the safest place to be is underwater, and that's kind of not so much her swimming and literally being underwater, but that's where she finds herself, is like wrapping herself up inside home and just not wanting to leave because she's afraid of not being able to handle anything else that happens in her life. As someone who struggles with anxiety, I can definitely relate to this character, and I was worried that it was going to maybe be too much for me. So I made myself a deal that if I started to get too emotional as I read this book, that I could stop. But that didn't happen. There were times where it was emotional and I closed the book for a few minutes and went and did something else, but I could come back to it and I made it through. So either that means that I'm doing well with my self-care for anxiety, or the book is just written that well, maybe a combination of both. Alright, so those are just some of the books that I read in the month of August. As I said, I did read some other ones, but I took most of them to the classroom so that the kids could read them. And if you're really, really curious, you can ask in the comments below and I'll give you a list of some of the other things that I read. I hope you are having a wonderful and bookish day. As always, happy reading. Adios.